like that song. That's my son playing all the instruments. I like it. It's a good theme song. It's like an earworm, right? Welcome to the Electric Scooter Podcast, episode 30. This episode, wow, 30 episodes. It's actually more. This is episode number 30, but we did some in-betweenies with Zero to Epic updates as he was crossing the United States on electric scooters. Yeah, he did that. He crossed coast to coast on electric scooters. But in this episode, I'll try to keep it a little bit light, but I've noticed that I've been neglecting electric scooter news. Electric scooter podcast news. It's time. I've been neglecting the news. And I talked about it in last episode. So in this episode, we're going to talk mostly, it's bummer news. We're going to end on a high note. We're going to do our top 5. So that's going to be good. And when the podcast is over, you'll go, yay, that was good. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Apollo Phantom. I've only ridden it once. And spoiler alert, it was a disaster. I didn't like it. And then we're going to do some news. And in that news is some tragedy. It's mostly bad news for scooter heads. But let's get started here first and talk a little bit about the Apollo Phantom. Let me start out by saying that if you're an Apollo fanboy or you own the Apollo Phantom, don't take this the wrong way, okay? My caveats at the beginning are, I've only ridden it once. And I did not go into the P settings and adjust it and go through the torque levels and all that stuff like I've done with my Wolf Warrior and my other scooters. So the person who owned it could have set it up horribly, but this person has a couple other scooters and kind of knows what they're doing. So, you know, and they seem to hate the scooter as well. But I really wanted to like this scooter. They made such a big deal about it on all the YouTubes, on the Electric Scooter Guide, and just the different reviews that I've seen. I'm not going to list them all, but Electric Scooter Guide did a really deep dive, and they are unbiased. They do great reviews, of course, but a lot of the other YouTube channels and folks that do reviews and are heavy on electric scooters really like this scooter. So you might not want to listen to me. That's the caveat. That's the disclaimer. That's the don't get butt hurt if you own one, because, hey, you might tweak it and change things and set up everything ideally for you, and you may like it. Why did I want to like this scooter? Well, Apollo did something interesting. They took all the feedback from their customers, little things they like or don't like about the throttle, about the wheels, about the suspension, about the kickstand, whatever it happened to be. And they, to my understanding, actually I heard them say this, so they went back to their Chinese manufacturer and incorporated all those things so that they can say that the Apollo Phantom truly is designed from the ground up based on user feedback received by Apollo's customers. Now, it comes in 2 versions. There's a disc brake version and the hydraulic disc brake. So mechanical disc brake and hydraulic disc brake. The difference is $200, $17.99 for the mechanical disc brake or cable, and $19.49. Well, it's $150, I guess, difference for the hydraulic disc brake version. And I normally always would recommend, and still do, that you get the hydraulic brake version. It's just so much better, and there's less maintenance issues, and it's worth the money. Spend it. And let me read for you what Apollo says on their website. It's an all-new masterpiece of innovation. Really? Made right here on Canadian soil. Is that really true? My understanding is that they're still made in China, but designed in Canada. So it says made right here on Canadian soil. Unlike other scooter companies, Apollo doesn't rely solely on factory quality control. We take matters into our own hands because we care that much. Again, I'm still reading directly from their website. After leaving the manufacturer, which that tells me right there, China, the Phantom was tested extensively at a custom-designed facility to expose any potential design weaknesses. Well, I think they might have missed a couple, but when you purchase the Phantom, you're buying the result of hundreds of hours of research and refinement, all of which culminate in one of the most reliable scooters on the market, the Apollo Phantom. So those are the words of Apollo. There's a couple things in there that throw up a little red flags for me. One, definitely saying that they're designed from the ground up in Canada. I'll buy that. But made right here on Canadian soil? I don't know. I don't get that. Doesn't seem to strike me as being a true statement, but there it is on their webpage. I'm pretty sure they didn't mine the ore in Canada and get it molten and pour it into a mold and bend it and shape it and make it into a scooter. My understanding, don't sue me for libel or gossip, defamation of character. My understanding, what I heard them say in an interview, was that they did all the design work in Canada and they have a company in China that actually builds it. So I find that statement a little bit odd. And there's a lot of good things about this scooter. I'm just a sarcastic individual. Sometimes I can be cynical. So just listen to the facts, make your own decisions. Has a top speed of 40 miles per hour. That's pretty good. It weighs 77 pounds, which is not bad for 40 miles per hour. Max load of 300 pounds. That's some pretty big scooter heads can fit on that, which is a good thing. Handlebar height's 41 inches. So they claim that users up to 6.5 feet tall can cruise on that scooter. I don't know. Whatever. Any basketball players out there riding scooters? Maybe. They say if you set it on the lower power settings, you can get up to 40 miles, which is 64 kilometers of range. But if you set it to the max, man, you can get it up to 25 miles of range, which is about 40 kilometers. I always like to talk about tires. Let's talk about the tires. Here's a red flag: specially designed tires. When I see specially designed tires, that tells me hard to get, hard to purchase a replacement when you get a flat. They are both ultra wide for improved grip and control, true statement, air filled for even greater shock absorption. When they say air filled, that's a pneumatic tire, but does that mean it's got a tube in it? You definitely want a tubeless tire, because if a tire has a tube in it, you can get what's called a pinch flat. Like no surrounding environmental factor like a nail or a piece of glass causes it. Just internally, that tube gets pinched and rubs, and you got a flat. You might be in the middle of nowhere. How fast are you going when it happens? I don't know. So, specially designed tires that are air-filled. Yeah, I don't like that. It's shady, gray area wording. For even greater shock absorption. True. 10 inches, that's good. 3.25 inches wide, that's good. 7 inches of ground clearance, I like that. It says they're perfect for city, trail, and hybrid riding. I'm not sure. Maybe, I have an Apollo Explorer, which I do like quite a bit. And I would say, yeah, it's got 10-inch tires. They have tubes, unfortunately, but they do scoot across rocks fairly well. I've done that. I don't know about off-road, nothing that the Wolf Warrior with knobby tires could do. But it has this quad spring suspension, and this is what the Electric Scooter Guide was raving about. I think they were calling it like the best shock absorbing they've ever seen because it has dual shocks on each of the two swing arms, and it has rubber bump stops. And that is supposed to be just crazy good, making the suspension smoother when it reaches the end of the travel. The first thing you notice, though, the first thing I noticed when I look at it was the screen. It's got this polygon shape, and it looks futuristic, kind of Transformer looking. What I did not like is I couldn't see anything in the daylight at high noon with the sun beating down. Again, I live in Las Vegas, so a lot of you are not going to deal with that. And you live in these dark corners of the earth where it never gets super bright. Maybe that screen will work for you. Didn't work for me. I could hardly make anything out. One thing that's fantastic about it is, of all the scooters I've ever ridden, this is the only one that tells you your remaining range. It'll tell you, you can set it for kilometers or miles. Hey, you got 14. If you keep cruising the speed you're going under the similar circumstances, you got 14 kilometers till you get home. That's great. I like that. Little icon lights up. If you forget to put your turn signals on and you start a turn, yeah, okay. That's nifty, I suppose. Very gadgety, widgety. Just the fact that it has turn signals alone is awesome. Love it. It's got a thumb throttle. Here we get to the problem. There's a lot of reasons I don't like thumb throttles, but this one is notchy. I could not control the speed. Again, maybe the guy I borrowed it from didn't have it set up properly, couldn't figure it out. I don't know. This is a scooter guy, but he said, hey, take it for a ride. And I jumped on that thing, and it was notchy. It was just, I would say, unrideable. I did not like it. Did not like the non-linear presentation of power. Thumb throttle was kind of cool, the way they designed the paddle on it, but I don't know. It is definitely not a scooter for me unless they can fix those things, or those things that I mentioned are changeable through your program settings, which we call P settings. So it's a great scooter on paper. And again, every review I've read, I don't know if these people are in the pocket of Apollo. I don't know what their deal is. Everybody raves about it. Some of them calling it the best scooter you can buy, the best bang for your buck, all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to let you know there are some good things and some bad things. And reading scooter forums online, one owner was saying that his Apollo Phantom completely died with less than 20 kilometers lifetime miles on it. Another one said, mine dies every few miles. Every time I take off on a medium-sized trip, it dies after a few miles, and then he's able to get it to come back to life. Another gal said it comes with a non-slip silicone pad that you stand on. It wasn't glued properly. I don't see that as a big deal. But it also had, the same scooter, a broken lock ring. And that's what holds the stem in place. So that is no bueno. You don't want your stem coming loose or wobbling. And when I was riding it, I, again, experienced stem wobble. And I did not feel like I was on a solid scooter because of that. On the forum, there were also some complaints about Apollo's customer service, but I think for the most part, they're one of the better distributors, and they do have in their lineup a a number of really great scooters that are high quality, good build, fun to ride, depending on what you want. And as I mentioned, I do own the Apollo Explorer, and I love it. They also have a new Air Pro, which only weighs 35 pounds, and it costs $700, $100 cheaper than the Segway 9-Bot Max, which I usually recommend for first-time scooter buyers because I've ridden that one extensively. I put miles on the Segway 9-Bot Max, even though I don't own one. But this new Air Pro is going to give it a run for the money at $100 cheaper and weigh in only 35 pounds. I think the Segway 9-Bot Max is definitely more than that. It's like 40, 45, something like that. So don't think I'm a hater of Apollo. I'm not. I just have my doubts as to whether the Apollo Phantom is ready for prime time or it is as cracked up to be as awesome as everybody thinks it is.
Electric podcast scooter news. Dagwood here to bring to you. Electric podcast scooter news. Dagwood here to bring to you.
Wait, electric podcast scooter news? I call this segment ESPN. That's EPSN. Well, that's what the blues will do to you, man. It'll tear you apart. Speaking of the news, I have been neglecting the news lately, and the news tonight's kind of a bummer. It's like 3 deaths that I am sad to report. The first is Lisa Baines. She was an actress known for her humor and her confident, elegant presence. You might recognize her. She appeared in over 80 television and film roles. I think she may have been best known for her work on stage productions, especially Broadway. But she was really big in the 80s, and she was in the movie Cocktail, and she did Gone Girl with Ben Affleck. I think that was a fairly recent movie. She died of head injuries sustained 10 days earlier when she was struck by a scooter in Manhattan. She was 65 years old. She was struck by the scooter as she was crossing Amsterdam Avenue in West 64th Street in Manhattan. Wow, that is terrible. The operator of the scooter just drove straight through a red light, crashed into her, and then took off, and they were not able to find that person. It was a hit and run. And up until now, this was a month ago. We're talking, this is July. Right now, if you're listening to this podcast as it's released, we're in the month of July 2021. This happened June 4th when she was actually struck, and then she passed away 10 days later. Sad to hear. Another man was arrested in England after hitting a 16-year-old boy in another hit and run. This one happened at approximately 1:20 a.m. Officers were called to the city of Bromley in England following reports of a collision involving a car and an e-scooter. The Metropolitan Police found the teenager who had been riding the scooter with serious injuries. He was transported to a central London hospital, and later, sadly, he lost his life. The driver was a 20-year-old man who was apparently drinking and driving. He did not pass the alcohol breath test. He was taken into custody where he remains, and they didn't get the scooter back. Somebody, they believe, a red Fiat Punto was seen in the area, and they suspect they may have taken advantage of the situation, stolen the scooter, and cruised away. Wow. Again, another terrible, tragic scooter-involved accident. across the water. I guess they don't say pond. What is it? The cliffs of Dover. Paris has threatened to ban self-service electric scooters until they can fix the safety issues. There was an Italian lady that was visiting the French capital, and she was hit by a scooter. And now the French government is saying they're going to limit the speed of scooters and not provide parking spaces on footpaths. Not sure what that means. I guess they're not going to allow scooters to park where there are pedestrian footpaths. That's what it sounds like. Again, this is also June of 2021. A 31-year-old woman died after she was knocked down by an e-scooter rider. 31 years old. I'm assuming she was fairly healthy. I don't know. Poor Lisa Baines, she was 65 years old. This young lady was 31 years old. In different parts of France, e-scooters are really popular because of the environmental impact. And all over the world, there is said to be more than 100 cities that have rental scooters. And in Paris, there's 15,000 available scooters for Parisians and tourists to use, available for hire. But they do limit the speed to 20 kilometers an hour, which is 12 miles per hour. In 2019, because they just had a bunch of incidents and several deaths, they required anybody riding a scooter to be over 12 years old. Only one rider per device. And that's interesting because apparently there was two people on this scooter that struck the Italian woman. They only gave her first name Miriam. And she was walking in a pedestrian area. When the scooter knocked her over, she fell and hit her head on the pavement and suffered a cardiac arrest. She was taken unconscious to the hospital where she remained in a coma until her death 2 days later. Wear a helmet, scooter heads. I call you scooter heads. Protect those heads. Wear a helmet. Now, this wouldn't have helped this poor lady who was a pedestrian. Nobody's going to walk down the street, right? Wearing a helmet, that's a little excessive to expect of a tourist visiting your country. All tourists that are walking must wear helmets. So this poor woman was hit by two people on one scooter, one of which was a nurse, and divers from river police that patrol the river area where she was walking gave her emergency medical treatment and managed to restart her heart after 30 minutes. Unfortunately, she remained in a coma until her death 2 days later. And the young nurse riding the scooter has been charged with aggravated manslaughter, and she also fled the scene. The fact that this woman from Italy named Miriam was a tourist reminds me that just as when you're in a foreign country traveling, no matter where you're from, you could be Australian, American, Canadian, you do something weird and crazy. All Canadians are like that. All Americans are like that. Because sometimes folks in foreign countries might not have a lot of interaction with foreigners. And believe me, the one time that they do, they are going to generalize everybody. Well, the same thing is true of scooter heads. When you are riding, always be overly courteous. Stop at red lights. If there's a narrow area and someone's walking, I will get off of my scooter and walk until I pass them and get back on my scooter. You can see that on one of my YouTube videos. I think it was called Wolf Warrior in the Swamps of Las Vegas or something like that. I don't remember the name of my own YouTube. But I put my money where my mouth is because people are looking at me and judging all scooters. If you just zoom by somebody and you're swearing and smoking a cigarette and get out of my way or something like that, people who don't normally run into electric scooters cruising the boulevard are going to, when they talk to their friends, generalize and say, oh, yeah, people who ride scooters, they're all like that. So I caution you not only to wear the proper gear, which first and foremost means a helmet and good gloves. When I interview Ginger on Wheels, I'm going to ask him what helmet he wears. Might be listed on his webpage, but he's got a Bell helmet that's full face, but looks really light, like you could still wear it in the heat. It has a lot of ventilation, which is crucial if you live in Las Vegas. So that's the bummer news. That's the end of the news. And now a new segment called the Electric Scooter Podcast Top 5. Hey, what time is it? What time is it? The time. What time? Oh, yeah.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself, because it's time for the ESP's Top 5.
Yeah, just sitting here tinkling the ivories. Was that an over-elaborate intro? I promise to take a little easy on you on the outro, maybe do a little blues or something. This section is called ESP's Top 5. And in this episode, scooter accessories. And of course, I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not going to start with 1. Why would I start with 1? It's like showing the ending of a movie first. You'll be reaching for the Vegemite and the remote control of your television. Rather than that, let's start with 5 and go down to 1. Number 5, I actually, because none of them are, let's just say, essential. Well, I don't know, maybe this one is the tire valve extender. That is something that, I don't know if it's essential, but it's certainly nice to have for a lot of scooters where it's hard to reach in there and get the proper PSI into your inflatable tires, also known as pneumatic, meaning as opposed to solid tires. A lot of those, I don't know why, it's really difficult to get in there and get that tire valve screw top onto the actual tire valve. It's just difficult. You can get in there with maybe needle nose pliers. You can try all different kind of stuff, but some scooters actually come with a tire valve extender, and it just looks like a little black tube with your tire valve screw on the end. And I kind of tied that with, I didn't want to go to a top 8 list or 7 list or whatever. Cup holder, it's convenient if you'd like a cup holder. I would probably put some sort of sports bottle or something in there, because if you're trying to drink a cup of coffee on the way to work through traffic over cobblestones, you might spill a little bit or get it on your poncho. So I don't know. Get a proper sports cup to put your favorite beverage in. Hey, I'm not going to tell you whether it should be something frosty or something hot. That's up to you. The other one, really, that tied for number 5 is the phone holder. And I don't think it's essential, because it's kind of in the sunlight in the daytime anyway. It'd be kind of difficult. And if it gets hot, your phones, once they reach a certain temperature, they just quit working. They just shut down. And when you got a glass facing to the sky, depending on where you live, if you're in the Pacific Northwest or Canada, then that might not be an issue, because you may never see the sunshine. I don't know how it works where you live. Number 4. This is also kind of a tie. Man, what a cop-out. Eye and ear protection. I put them together because ear protection is good if you're over 25 miles per hour, which 2 of my 5 scooters are capable of doing And a third one can actually maybe peak there, but you're not going to cruise along at that. But over that speed, you start getting wind noise and stuff in your ears, just not that pleasant, but you still want to be able to hear traffic. Eye protection, hey, try driving around without being able to see, or after you get a pebble popped into your retina. No fun, trust me. So eye pro, ear pro, eye protection, ear protection. Number 3 is lights. Again, another cop-out. I put lights/turn signals. Man, turn signals are really awesome, but they're only available on a few select scooters, but there's probably aftermarket stuff you could tack on to your existing scooter and make it work. Light. You want a light that sits high. If your scooter came with accessories like most scooters, I don't know, maybe 80% of them, have that light at the bottom. Why? I don't get that. It really doesn't make sense. Just put it up higher and you're going to have better vision. It's science. You can't argue with science. So if you have a scooter like my Fluid Freeride Horizon, which has the light above the front tire, then you're going to need just a bicycle light, one of those kinds that you can screw onto your handlebar. There are super high-end ones that cost a lot of money, and then there are cheap ones that work absolutely fine. Do what suits your budgets. Hey, you do you. Number 2. Number 1's ridiculous. Maybe I should have did number 1 first because number 1 is so obvious. How many of you have guessed already our number 2 and our number 1? All right. I get it. There's a lot of you. Okay. Wow. That's even more than I expected. Number 2 is gloves. And like I said about lights, you can go from made in Haiti tissue paper gloves for 8 cents a piece. Wow, where did that come from? I totally made that up. And why Haiti? Just because Haiti's been in the news lately, I guess. They have it rough down there. I don't even know if they make gloves. But whatever type of cheap glove that's hanging on in your local haberdashery hooks in the glove section, then you could go for that, but you can get motorcycle gloves, you can get bicyclist gloves, you can get weightlifting gloves, but some really nice high-end deer skin name brand motorcycling gloves, they could run you a couple $100, which if you break it down, what is that, $20 a finger? I did that without a calculator. So that's number 2, gloves. Why? Because when you fall, you're naturally inclined to put your hands out, which is a bad idea. This brings us into a whole nother sidebar. Tuck and roll, if you fall, if the worst situation or scenario happens, tumble. If you put your arm straight and make it straight, you could break a bone. Most of us scooter heads might not be UFC fighters, but UFC fighters know that that's what you do when you fall. You're going to tuck and roll. And it might take a little bit of practice because you want to put your hand out, and that's going to, of course, it's going to skin your hand up, but you could have more joint and bone damage by falling like that. On a scooter, luckily, you're standing up, right? Unlike a motorcycle or other modes of transportation, you are standing up. So in my situations that I've encountered, 99% of the time, you kind of run away, as long as you're not on the street going 40 miles an hour on a Wolf Warrior or something. Or worse yet, 70 on a Ryan. Yeah, no, you're not going to run that off, man. That is not going to happen. You're going to look like a cartoon. But hopefully somebody will be filming it so you can watch it again over and over in slow motion. Yeah, I do a lot of low-speed stuff, a lot of off-road stuff. So I hit a rock or ditch or something, I just keep jog it right off and look immediately back and say, how damaged is my scooter? I'm not really worried about me because I'm fine. But I've seen videos, as you may have, of people cruising down the street and they hit a little oil slick, or in some cases, I didn't even see what they just got the wobbles and just bam, down they go. And first thing they do is put their hands out. So make sure you have gloves. And like with any accessory, you buy what you can afford. Get the best you can afford. I mean, you've only got 2 hands, most of us, so you want to protect them, right? Because you use them for a lot of useful things. So the principle with gloves is kind of, if I'm off-road, I want something thicker and heavier in case I land on a rock or something with my hand. But if you're on the street, you want something that has a slippery palm, because when you hit the gravel, when you hit the asphalt, the pavement, you want to be able to slide. And those types of gloves are going to cost a little bit more money. They're going to be a little bit spendier, a little pricier. So get what you can, because remember, they're your limbs, they're your body parts. I happen to prefer fingerless gloves. I wear motorcycle gloves that come from the factory with the fingers already cut. And the reason behind that is so I can grab things. Again, where I live in the desert, it gets very, very hot. So it's nice to have your fingers exposed. And plus, if you're going to be touching your phone or grabbing a drink of water, or you're heading into your local corner store and you just want to pick up a few things, bottle of olives, can of Spam, and a Third Reich swizzle stick, you'll be able to reach in and get your change, get your wallet, get your credit card, and put it back easily. So that's why I prefer leather, commercial-made motorcycle gloves with the fingers cut. Oh, my. Are we really going to have to guess what number 1 is? What is the most important part of your body? And this is asexual, I mean, non-gender specific. Your head, right? Remember, what was that show? There was a cartoon by the same guy that did The Simpsons, Futurama. But people survive with just their heads, right? As like an upside-down fishbowl over a head, and Richard Nixon and all these people could talk and still interact. You want to save your head. Of all the stuff they could have saved, cryogenically or otherwise, on this particular television show, they chose the head. So choose your head. Wear a nice helmet to protect those little things you see out of and eat with and hear out of and that kind of thing, all right? I shouldn't, and I won't, elaborate. Protect your melon.
Electric Scooter Podcast Top 5.
Somebody ought to tell that guy he cannot sing. Did you like the top 5? How was that? If you like it, let me know, and we'll keep doing it. We have a gap-toothed comedian by the name of David Letterman, who back in the 80s and 90s was really popular, and he had his top 10 list. But if you like the idea of the Electric Scooter Podcast having a top 5, drop me an email at dagwoodstreets@gmail.com. Until next time, keep the shiny side up and the dirty side down.